today's plant talk is going to be about Nootka rose. Latin name is Rosa nootcana, and the word Nootka comes to us from the Nootka Sound on the west coast of Vancouver Island in British Columbia. And Nootka is also the name of the Nootka people, the native people from that region. So some general info about Nootka rose. It's a shrubby, bushy plant that grows from 1 to 9 feet tall in loose thickets. It reproduces by seed and also spreads vegetatively by sprouts with its rhizomes. So it's able to spread quite quickly with the rhizomes. The stems are a dark brown color and slender. The thorns are in pairs and at the base of the leaves. The leaves are alternately arranged and pinnate with 5 to 9 leaflets. And the leaves are also deciduous, so they will lose all their leaves in the wintertime. The flowers bloom between May and July, and the petals are from a light to dark pink color. The fruit is a round pear-shaped hypnathium, also known as rosehip. And they are ripe between August and September with bright red to reddish-brown, reddish-purple colors. And they stay on the plant through the wintertime. And we'll find Nootka rose growing west of the Cascades at elevations below 7,500 feet. It's often seen as an understory plant in both dry and moist forest communities, also found in mountain and plain grasslands, and often found growing alongside red osier dogwood, quaking aspen, black cottonwood, and snowberry. It prefers medium to fine textured soils with a neutral pH, but it can tolerate a low level of fertility in soil as long as it has enough water. It cannot tolerate drought. Again, with light, it can be in open and shaded areas, but it just needs a lot of rainfall. And this plant will recover from a fire, but multiple fires to the same area will significantly reduce a population. So now we can talk about Nootka rose and impact on ecosystems. Bees are the main pollinators for these plants. The open-faced flowers are very attractive to bees, more so than the kind of closed-up non-native roses that are often found in landscaping and in people's gardens. Small mammals, birds, and insects will eat the rose hips in wintertime. And the Nootka rose plant is also a larval host plant for the morning cloak butterfly larvae. Deer and elk will eat the leaves and the young shoots and the new growth on the plants. And in restoration, it's often used to control soil erosion on hillsides and steep stream banks. Because of its rhizomes and rapid growth, it can be very effective for controlling erosion. And I know we've planted this plant a bit this year, working with the Kitsap Conservation District, and when we worked with Department of Transportation, and even with Grays Harbor Conservation District too, we planted a bunch of Nootka rose. So we can talk about the ethnobotany with Nootka rose. The rose hips, which is the fruit of the plant, is can be harvested and used to make jams or jellies, syrups, or dried and made into teas. You can harvest the rose hips in the fall, 1 week after the first frost, for the best flavor. They should come off the plant easily when they're ripe. And the rose hips will sweeten up as the weather gets colder. So if they are harvested too soon, they'll be very tart. The taste is tangy, similar to hibiscus, and the fruit can be eaten raw if the seeds are removed first. So the seeds are inside the fruit, and they're very hairy and kind of an unpleasant texture, so they need to be removed first before using them in any way. But the rose hips are known to be very rich in vitamin C and known to reduce inflammation. So some medicinal uses for it as well. So I'm also going to provide a couple recipes here. One is a recipe for rosehip jam, which I've never tried before, but it sounds good because I love the flavor of rose hips. And the other recipe that I'm going to include is how to dry out the rose hips once they've been harvested, and how you can make tea out of them. This is the way that I've always had rose hips before, is in tea, and it tastes really good and it's really good for you. So I'll include those as well. So some of the ways that the native people in this region would use this plant, most often they would make a syrup out of the fruit to treat respiratory infections. They would also dry the rose hips out and make tea. And the rose hips could be a really important source of vitamins, especially in wintertime when food is scarce. Because the rose hips stay on the plant throughout winter, it provides nutrients to many animals and to the people as well. And they would eat the rose hips either raw or they would dry them out first. And they were also known to make a concoction from the roots to use to cure a sore throat. And they would also make a tea from the stalks, which was used to treat labor pains during childbirth. So kind of in conclusion, some other things that people could use Nootka rose for is in landscaping or in a native plant garden. I think it makes a good landscaping plant because it's produces these beautiful fragrant flowers and attracts lots of bees. It's great for the pollinators. But just in restoration and kind of the way that we've used this plant, it is very effective for controlling erosion and adding biodiversity to a restoration planting site. And with the rose hips can provide nutrients for many animals during wintertime. And so it's a great plant to have in a restoration project.